You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. Our presenting sponsor is the entertainment payroll company Extreme Reach. What you may not know about Extreme Reach is that they are already an industry disruptor in the areas of creative asset management and video ad distribution. And now they are poised to disrupt the entertainment payroll business. If you are creating content, you need them. Call them and tell them I sent you. Today I got to speak with Mari Meyer. Mari is a writer, journalist, filmmaker, and actor. She has a BA in journalism and completed the 3-year conservatory program at the Stella Adler Studio of Acting in New York. As a journalist, she has over 10 years of experience in news, art, and entertainment journalism, both in the Netherlands and in the U.S. She's the producer and director of VAGILANT, a short documentary film about the Women's March on Washington, and was the lead producer on a music video project, A Whole New World. She co-wrote, produced, and starred in The Soothing System, an award-winning narrative short film. In 2018, Female Filmmakers Fuse Film Festival, try saying that one, in Los Angeles, named her the Filmmaker of the Year. We talked about her new projects in development, her work within the prison system in New York, and how finding your voice and telling your story, as cliché as that is starting to sound, is still imperative. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merch. You can also listen on Apple Podcast and all the podcast places. And I want to make sure that you know about a new podcast that is launching in April. It's called Catch a Break, and it's the insider's guide to breaking into and navigating Hollywood. I'm hosting it, but it's also produced by Jeanette Volturno, Marcy Brown, Jessica Malanofi, Enrico Sacco, and Shirley Davis. The show is a series of conversations with panels made up of industry insiders and veterans, where we tackle all kinds of topics, starting with things they didn't necessarily teach in film school. In addition to the conversations, we will also be giving away bonus materials, breakout sessions, videos, and samples to help round out the experience. Season 1 launches soon. Go to catchabreakpodcast.com and subscribe so you will know when it's live. Okay, here's my conversation with Mari Meyer. Have a listen. What do you do?
I am a journalist, a writer, and a filmmaker.
Those are all the things.
I think so.
Let's go back.
There's other things, but yes, there are a few things for sure.
Let's go back to the beginning and get your background real quick, because I want to talk about several of your projects. Where are you from?
I'm originally from the Netherlands. I was born and raised there, and I moved to the United States first for an internship in New York with Dutch National Television in 2007, I believe. And I stayed there for 6 months, and I was obsessed.
As everyone is when they get to New York. As
everyone is. Well, it was my dream since I was very young to move to New York. We went there when I was 12 with my family, and I walked the streets and just looked up, and it was all very movie-like
it's
to
me.
It's
the best.
And I told my parents, I was like, I'm gonna live here. They were like, okay.
Here you are.
And there I was, moving to New York about, I want to say 10 years later, but jumping ahead. So I went back to the Netherlands after that, and I moved in 2009 to attend drama school. So.
Wait, hold on. Was your internship as a journalist?
Yeah, I interned as a journalist, and at night I took acting classes.
Where?
At the Stella Adler Studio of Acting.
I went to Strasbourg.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Well, they were friends before they were frenemies. So
right? Well, yeah.
They all came from the same tradition, the group theater. But so I took classes at night. I was in plays in high school, and I was so interested in performing, but I was also very scared and very self-conscious and very nervous, and it was I just needed some time, I think, to be able to step away from that and going to a totally new town, and just nobody knew me there.
Yeah, you could reinvent yourself.
Yeah, it was both incredibly scary because I literally knew 0 people and had 0 friends, but it was also very liberating because if I was going to walk into Stella Adler and say I want to take a class here, and who was going to say, oh, who do you think you are that you can do that? Nobody, because they don't know me. So
it's harder to do it in front of the people who know and love you.
Yeah, because at that point I had landed this really prestigious internship in New York, and I was already working for Dutch National Radio part-time while I was in college, and it seemed pretty clear-cut to everyone that this is what I was going to do, and this was my path, and knowing that journalism is a difficult profession to break into, to stay in, everyone just thought I was insane.
Because you got in.
They're like, you were already working. People say that this is all very promising. Like, why would you
throw it all away to go to acting school?
But I was like, listen, I can't explain it. There's just something that I feel like I need to do.
Now, were you on-camera journalist or were you writing?
I was mostly writing, but I majored in TV production. So we just did everything. We produced our own talk show in journalism school. We went out all around the country. I did a thesis film with someone about Scientology. And I just went all over. I did filming and I did editing and I did interviewing and
all the parts.
Yeah, I had an internship where I was on camera a whole bunch. I have no idea where all those things went because that medium actually went under afterwards. So there's somewhere in the digital sphere, there's me reporting on pole dancing classes. Awesome. That was first starting, yeah. So yeah, I was doing some on-camera work, but I think it did surprise some people that I was harboring this secret dream of being on the stage.
So then did you move back to New York to go to Stella Adler?
Yeah, I did a class there and I had this wonderful teacher who actually had studied with Stella. She was at the time already 80 and she's still teaching and this is I don't know, almost 10 years later. So she's...
Oh, what's her name?
Betsy Parrish. She's just this marvelous lady, just such life, just had this life force inside of her.
Yeah. One of those New York legendary acting teachers.
Yeah, and she'd been on the stage with Elaine Stritch and she just had all these wonderful stories, but not in a way of ooh, I'm the best, but really just very much about
that delicious,
the craft and just to show up. She was always hello. And we were all hi. And your spine would just get a little bit straighter and you would your breath would become a little bit deeper and you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm alive. So I talked to her after one of my classes and I said, Betsy, I said, I think I want to go to school here. And it was just so scary because I didn't know what she was going to say. And she's like, well, that's wonderful. And I was like, really? You think I should do it? She's like, yes. And I just skipped all the way home from Flatiron to the East Village. I just couldn't believe it. So I auditioned for Stella Adler's grandson and they let me in. So I was like, well, now I have to do it.
Yeah, you can't not go now.
Now I can't not go. So I went back home and I was like, so listen, everyone.
Here's the thing.
I'm going to finish my degree and then I'm going to move to New York to go to acting school. And people were like, what?
And you were telling me that your dad is a doctor. So that must have been to him you're going to go to the moon and do what?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up with a lot of art, going to museums a lot, going into every single old church we would find it on our vacations and modern art museums. But I've thought about this a lot over the years. I don't think my parents ever really thought about where the art comes from. It's there and we can enjoy it.
But we don't know artists.
But who makes this?
Yeah.
And they think they think artists are really cool, but they don't really think about, how exactly they live. And that's certainly not something that you would want for your kid.
Well, there's no 401k.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever the Netherlands equivalent is.
Yeah, I kept trying to explain to them. I was like, the things that you enjoy are made by people. And I think I'm one of those people. And I need to figure that out. And they were like, but... they'd already sort of said goodbye to law school in their minds and were like, okay, fine, she'll be a writer. It's okay, she's a hard worker. She'll figure it out. And then I was like, I'm actually going to go a little bit further into insecurity land. So,
Buckle up.
Yeah, buckle up.
Here we go.
But they, as much as they don't really get still certain things, it always took them a while, but they are very supportive of me. So I think it's important to note that.
Yeah, good. Okay, so you were in New York studying at Adler, and then what happened?
So I studied at Adler, and it was a 3-year program. They have their own conservatory program, and it was just great and scary and hard. I think hard is one of the words because it was different from anything I'd ever done before, and they want you to break yourself open. It sounds really dramatic, but they want you to show up in a way that is really difficult when that's not a way that you've been relating to yourself. Mm-hmm. And
open, emotional, vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a vulnerability that was required that I thought I had, but that I realized was very limited as a coping mechanism, but not really, I wasn't really able to tap into it at times when I wasn't choosing to. So I learned a lot about that through just trying things out, lots of crying.
I mean, it makes you so human, right?
Yes. And I think that's when I realized, I'm onto something, is that I think that's the thing that I also really love about journalism still, is that the truth lives within everyone. So everyone has their own truth. And I was always so interested in playing like villains or people that are considered quote unquote bad, because what drives them and why are they who they are, and they don't think they're a bad person.
Right.
Even though I can objectively say like what they're doing is really shitty, but then how do you sort of reconcile that with the fact that they're still a human being? So
fascinating.
That was just so fascinating to me, and I mean, still is, obviously, to approach it from like an actor's perspective. You can approach that from all these different angles. From a writer's perspective, I don't think I would be so interested in like screenwriting right now if I hadn't been to acting school. So
for sure, because you know how to get all the way inside the character.
Yeah, so it's been. I haven't been acting for a few years now, or like, I mean, I have been doing some acting, but I haven't been pursuing it the way that I think you have to if you want to make a career out of it. It's very, very challenging. But it's always with me. Yeah, and I did a lot of teaching also after I graduated, so it's been like a big, big part of my life.
So how long did you stay in New York?
I moved here in February of 2017, so until then.
Wait, when did you go? Did you go in 2009?
Yeah, I went in 2009, so I was there for like 8 years.
And were you pursuing acting during that time, or did you start doing other things?
I was doing, I've been working in journalism basically again since I graduated from Stella Adler.
So was that your day job?
Yeah, it's been my day job actually.
That's great. So you weren't like waiting tables and...
No, I mean, I did a summer before I had my work visa. I did a summer of cocktail waitressing, and that was just, I was like, wow.
It's hard.
It's very hard. It's very demanding, like physically, but also just the people that you encounter and the way that they think they can claim you. And it was just, I was like, wow. It was very interesting, and I'm glad I had that experience. But I was also very grateful that after I graduated, a journalism friend of mine from the Netherlands was like, hey, we're starting this new online medium. I think you should write for it. And I was like, but I'm going to stay in New York, right? He was like, I think we can work something out. So, at the time, reluctantly, I returned to journalism, and I mean, I have been writing for Dutch media ever since, so that's been really great.
Oh, you're writing for Dutch media? Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Primarily, yeah.
Are you writing Dutch stories or U.S. stories, or what do you...
I write kind of everything that they need me to write, in the, mostly nowadays, the news realm. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've been doing. I've been doing translating work. I've been working for Vice as a freelance translator for many, many years now. Anything they need, from corporate materials to subtitles to magazine stories, online stories, they're like a whole conglomerate. So I've been working for them.
Oh, great. So interesting. All right. So then you moved here last year, or
last year.
2017. This is probably going to come out in 2019.
Yes, I moved here in 2017.
And at what point did you start filmmaking?
When I was still in New York. One of my classmates who I graduated with from Stella Adler and I, we produced a play together, and we both were at the time, she still is also, but I was too at the time pursuing acting in like this very, the way that we traditionally look at an acting career developing. You get your headshots, you try to get a website, you get enough material for a reel, you go on EPAs, which is the equity auditions, where if you're not a member, you probably won't even get seen, so you just sit around all day.
Sign up and sit.
Yeah, sign up and sit, exactly. And so we were both pursuing that, and there's all these places where you can like pay to be seen by managers and agents, and I just
doesn't seem right.
No, I mean, whatever your opinion might be about it, it exists. They're called like networking studios, or they call it an acting class, but really what you do is you get sides and you read, and maybe they give you 1 or 2 notes and you do it again. It's kind of like an audition situation, but
it's a workshop.
A workshop, yes. I think they call it workshops now, right? So you had to decide what your type was, your quote-unquote type. So where do you fall on the archetypes? Who do you see on TV that you recognize yourself in? What roles do you see yourself playing? Like all that stuff. And I could just never figure it out. I don't know. I had so much resistance internally to the whole process, to marketing myself that way, and to putting myself in a box that you would put a tie up and be like, I am this. It just...
Was it easier in theater? Was the resistance around on camera?
It's kind of everything.
Just in general.
Because it's, at that point in your career, like there are people that are solely targeting the stage, but there's very little pay in the stage. So you're probably better off trying to target both.
Yeah.
And people start in stage and make their way to the screen, or sometimes they make their way to the screen first and they try to get some credits, and then using those credits they can sort of transition back to what they originally wanted to do. I don't know why it was so hard for me, but every little step of that process was I found it so incredibly treacherous, and I just would go into an audition and they would barely look at me and I would just want to like throw something against the wall, you know?
It's terrible.
Which everyone feels that way, I know that, and I have endless respect and admiration for people that work through it.
Yeah.
But I found it just didn't get easier for me for some reason, and I was sitting with my friend and we kept talking about, what if we just made something? Because that's what they always say, like, create your own work.
Yeah.
We're like, we have literally nothing to lose but like a few $1,000s.
What's a little money?
We put some money aside. We're like, okay, we're really going to do this. And our name is Sarah Kronk. She's my collaborator to this day. And she's just, she's the person that you call in the middle of the night when literally anything happens and you need someone in the middle of the night. She's the person that calls, and she's such a big heart, and she's such a hard worker, and she's just like the person you want to collaborate with. So I was like, let's do it. Let's just make a film. So we made a narrative short film that we also were in.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it was it's an Edgar Allan Poe story, but it's a contemporary take on it. And we changed it so much that at this point it's more of an inspired by than adapted.
And which one?
It's called The System of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather. It's about a mental hospital. And we replaced the leads. So we made it contemporary, and then we replaced the leads, which were originally, of course, men, because the story was written in like 1845 or something.
When there were only men.
Yeah, there were 0 women, aside from the women in the story that are like lunatics. So we wrote it to have female leads. And then we were lucky enough to know some people that had a little production company, and they wanted to help us, and we just slowly over time hired a SAG actor, so like got a lot of like first hands-on experience of what it means to make a film.
Great.
And I realized that instead of it just being like, oh, all of this sucks, I'm waiting for my moment when someone calls action and I can act. I realized I had such a blast. It felt so empowering to just do the thing.
Like the whole process was great.
The thing, to write it, to edit the script, to get feedback on the script, to see then how we could, go about making it. It's super challenging, but it wasn't like a lead up to finally I could have my big day in the lights or something. I mean, I enjoyed the days where I was acting, but there were certain times when I was acting, I was like, it would kind of be cool if I could just like stand on the other side and just like kind of see what's happening right now.
Like that became the least of it?
Yeah, I mean, it became like it was a part of it, but it wasn't the part. And that was like a light bulb moment for me. I was like, I could do the other things too, and I think I could be good at those things too. So
that's life-changing.
Yeah, it was actually life-changing. Of course, then there's like, okay, so how many, difficult career avenues could you possibly pursue?
All of them.
Let's add another.
Okay, so then after that, were you like, now what? Or let's talk about that film first. Did you send it to festivals?
Yeah, I played at this point, I want to say about 10 festivals.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I got some nominations recently at a film festival here in LA. It won an award. They gave me the Filmmaker of the Year award, which was just insane.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was not at all prepared for that, and it was just kind of exactly what I needed to be like, okay, yes.
Yeah, there's a little affirmation.
Yeah, it's nice, I mean, not to say that awards are just, 1% of what you should be thinking about, but it's nice when someone's like, oh, I see what you're doing, and I think that you should keep doing that thing.
Of course.
Yeah. So yeah, that was really nice. And we recently got accepted into another one in New York. It's the whole awards thing is such a long process.
Yeah.
Like you start sending it out, and then it's like some festivals you don't hear from like 8-9 months later. So
like you can be in festivals for years with the same film.
You can be, yeah. We did our first one. Was it late last year, earlier this year? It's been a while. I think we're going to start tapering down now and sort of see where we could bring it, to what online platform we could bring it to, and where it might be able to stream and stuff. But yeah, it's been a fun ride.
Now, what is that film called?
It's called The Soothing System.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now we can only see it at a festival.
Yeah, you can only see it at a
festival.
festival.
Some distribution.
Yeah, also my documentary short that I made that's also still in consideration, like a bunch of places. So
Okay, I want to talk about that. Say the title of that?
it's called VAGILANT.
Yes, Vagilant. Okay, talk about that.
Yeah, it's funny. Every time I talk, most women I talked about it are like, you just see their eyes
Everybody's
light
lights up.
Yeah, and then you talk to some other people and they're like, what? Yeah, so it's a documentary short. I made it together with my partner.
What a great title.
Thank you. So I co-directed with Andrew Weeks, and it's a short about an artist and an activist who invents this female superhero called the Vigilante. And the Vigilante wears a full-size vagina costume that's made of fabric and felt. And she...
Just full vulva.
Yeah, it's just full vulva. And her head is the clitoris. And we follow her as she goes to the Women's March on Washington, which was the single biggest protest or demonstration
ever
in U.S. history. Yeah, so we went to the march, a very cold day in D.C., which was insane. There's like 1 million people there, which we had not expected. So yeah, we follow her there, and it was shot by women. It was scored by women. One of your previous guests, Joanne Harris, composer, lent her talents.
Fantastic.
She also did the score for the Soothing System. She basically makes music for everything that I make, which is just, I don't know how I got so lucky.
That is so great.
So yes, I've been collaborating with her for a long time. Vaginal was edited by a woman. So we really tried to get as many women involved in that process as we possibly could. Colored by a woman. Mm-hmm. So it was really... for other reasons, there are always challenges, but it was a very, very, very cool experience.
So was that kind of meta for you to be at the Women's March and with this superhero and making the documentary and also just being there?
I honestly don't feel like I was, and I think journalists can probably relate to this, or probably documentary filmmakers in general, you are somewhere differently when you're there to do a story. You're very attuned to what you want and what you think you need, which when you're in the editing room might turn out that you needed something else. But you're very, very, it's almost like you see the world through this lens of what can I use? Uh-huh. So I definitely would say I was at the march and I really enjoyed the march. There was this immense feeling of just being surrounded by like-minded people. Mm-hmm. That, I'm queer, and I was like, okay, I'm surrounded by 1 million people who don't think I'm going to go to hell. That's really nice.
How refreshing.
Yeah. Or who believe, probably, hopefully, that I deserve to be married, or I deserve to have a family with the person I love.
You're a whole human.
I'm an entire human,
yeah.
And my love for my partner is a real love, and we deserve to have... a life together. So stuff like that was it felt amazing, but I was also just so focused.
You're also working.
Yeah, just trying to navigate an unnavigatable space, trying to get footage, trying to figure it out. It was a lot, but there are definitely times where I was like, should we be doing this at all? This is insane, but I'm glad that we did it.
Yeah. So what's the status of that film right now?
It's done, and it played at a few festivals, but it's been very interesting with this one and we've gotten this feedback also from people that work in programming and that have been sort of in that world for a while, that it's pretty in your face. It's about a woman
being dressed as a vagina at the Women's March,
which is just so
that.
Subtle. I think, I don't know, maybe it's my European brain or my feminist brain or that blows my mind. That also in a country where it can be crazy enough on reality TV. We watch the most insane stuff go down. We watch people humiliate themselves, do anything really to be in the spotlight. But a 6-minute short about a woman dressed as a vagina is
oh no,
it's just one step too far. You guys, what did you think you were gonna do with this? So
no, we're very puritanical when it comes to vaginas and sex and equal rights.
Yes.
All those things.
So our protagonist went to a festival in D.C. She represented the film at a festival in D.C. that did program us, for which thank you. And she showed up in her, her activist
outfit,
in her vulva, and she was told by certain festival goers told her that she made them uncomfortable. And she was asked by security in the hotel. It was held at a hotel in D.C. She was asked by the security to leave the lobby. where she was handing out some flyers to sort of get, people to maybe come to the film. And she was like, why do you want me to leave? And they're like, well, there's children here. And she was like, I don't see any children. And they're like, this is just not appropriate. Like, you have to go. And she was like, I'm dressed as an organ. Like, if I were dressed as a heart, you'd be like, this is very inappropriate. You can't stand here dressed as a heart. So,
yeah, it was all a bit weird.
It just goes to show. I mean, first of all, it just made me angry, of course, and frustrated. But then I think I have like a very defiant side to me where someone is like, you can't do that. I'm like, you want to bet? So
watch me.
Watch me do it. So it just made me realize, like, we need to keep doing this, like, collectively.
Well, it shows you how much work we still have to do.
Yeah, but it makes me like angry and excited at the same time, because that means that the film should exist for that reason alone. It should exist in the world. It needs to be seen by more people. It made me more just focused on trying to get it. And even if it's not film festivals, like, does anyone want to host a screening in their home? Like, does any women's society anywhere want to, like,
colleges.
show this film? Yeah, colleges, like, whoever, right? So it just made me very, determined is the word I want to use.
Okay, go get it. Go get it. Okay, then what is next for you?
What is next? A few different things. Well, I've been writing a show, just me.
A series?
Yes, a series. I'm very much into the collaboration. All the projects I want to say I've done up to this point were like very heavy on the let's build it up from the ground together. I produced a music video for the actress Maya Eshett, who is in the upcoming sci-fi show Night Flyers. So she directed it, and I produced it. We're starting to go to film festivals with it now. I'm working with Sarah Cronk, who I made the soothing system with. We're working on like a digital series together. We shot a proof of concept for it that we directed. So it's all been very like together. But I'm writing a series alone, which is both really daunting but also like super fun. And it's about two women that want to have a baby together.
How's it going?
I finished episode 2 yesterday.
Congratulations.
It was raining outside. I made some tea. I think I got like 15 pages. I was like, I am the shit. As you sometimes feel when you're like on this high, and now I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go back home. I gotta like edit this. I don't even know if this is good. But it's been really great because I'm very committed to telling stories from any underserved perspective. So I think the LGBTQ angle leaves much to be desired in terms of storytelling. So,
are you going to try to sell it or make it?
I think at this point I would love to get into any producing lab or episodic lab or any type of fellowship situation where I think I feel very strongly about the story and about the bones that I've created, but I would love to learn. I think you should always try to put yourself in situations where you can learn from people that, have been doing it longer, know a little bit more. So, not because they're always right, but just because they are able to like guide you, and oftentimes they are right. So, and it's important to be able to recognize that. That's one of the things I love about collaborating. I always say, I only have one brain.
Yeah.
I only have my own experience to bring to the table. I want to know what you bring to the table, like from your background, because we can help each other.
Like, what have you already tried?
What have you tried that didn't work? And maybe it can work here. Let's see like what we can do. So I want to make my show. We'll see how I can do it, but I'm excited.
Okay, good. Tell me, what do you make? I'm interested in, well, usually let me pick a sentence and finish it. Normally I would ask, what do you make of women in this business kind of at this moment in time? And I want to hear your answer to that. But also, I'm so interested in your European perspective of what's happening in America with women.
Wow. Well,
if you could represent.
Being the spokesperson for all Europeans.
Thank you.
No, I want to just make it very clear right here, right now. I do not represent all of Europe. I am one Dutch lady living in LA. What do I make of it? That's a pretty broad question. What do you...
I know.
What, like specifically in the workforce or in creative professions or...
Well, on the one hand, specifically Hollywood, but it's also hard to keep it that narrow because it's happening all over the country, all over the world.
Well, I will say that one, and I didn't realize this until later, when I grew up, even in Europe, right? talking heads on television were just mostly men, right? It's like whenever someone was the boss of something, or
The authority.
the CEO, the expert, the person we would go to for the nightly news to give opinions. Like a lot of them were men. So for me to like move into directing, for instance, is like, wow, there's like a lot of people here. And I directed when I was at Stella Adler. I taught and I directed like, showcases for my students and stuff. And once I gave myself permission to step into that role, it was like, yes, but it takes a while, if that's not how you were cultivated and that's not what you were surrounded with.
You mean to even imagine doing it?
Yeah, to imagine doing it, or to step into that role and be like, yeah, this is where I need to be. So that's one thing I will say that I didn't realize until much later, and it ties into another thing that I realized, which is I'm from a very tolerant, for the most part, country, or so we want to think, right? We're the first country in the world to have gay marriage, which is really exciting, which I always tell people, like, I'm really proud of that, even though it's like not something that I had anything to do with.
But those are my people.
But those are my people. But because we have cloaked ourselves in this, like, it's almost like we're playing the role of tolerant. There's very little room to examine how we're not so very tolerant. So I grew up firmly believing that things were equal. And I remember myself in college, I cringe when I think about this, but I remember myself in college being like, what do we need feminism for? Like,
right, we're done.
Things are equal. I can do anything I want to do. Yeah. And you don't realize all the little different ways that, like, you are not being 100% respected the same way, or getting the same opportunity, or even listened to the same way, looked at the same way. And it took me years to learn that the hard way, oftentimes, like, having to fend off, like, like harassment situations, and be like, wow, this is what they mean, those, like, quote unquote angry women. This is what they mean when they say, we haven't even started, really. We have gained a lot, but we can't stop now.
I think that's the piece that makes it so jarring, is growing up thinking everything is equal, and then having a different experience that is not matching what you think is happening.
Well, for me, it ties into sort of a broader, much bigger notion of equality, and the staggering inequality that I've seen, not just in the United States. Obviously, I've traveled other places in the world where I've seen it too, but having grown up in a country with a little bit more of like a safety net, a security net, like, there are homeless people, but there's few of them, and we do pretty well, like, trying to keep them off the streets, and realizing, like, maybe putting people with psychiatric illnesses, like, in prison is not, like, gonna get them better. Like, it's not the same as, like, treatment, so, like, coming here and just realizing that listening to your recent episode with Shasheen about becoming homeless, and her just realizing, not just knowing, but feeling and experiencing the lack of any type of safety net for a family.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, it's all connected in a way. The way that we look at each other as people, the way that we tackle our problems. There's so many things underneath that I feel like need to be addressed simultaneously. If that makes sense.
The issues are big.
Yeah.
Far-reaching.
How much time do you have, dear listener?
I have all day.
We're only just getting into this.
You guys listen in LA traffic when you have hours. It's funny that brings up for me, I know that is just an underlying fear of so many people of, if I don't do everything right and get the right job and keep the right job and deal with my money right, I too will be homeless and there is no safety net. And I talked to many very successful women who are in, like, professional degreed jobs, and that's still the driving fear.
Yeah, and right, quote unquote right, doing everything right, it shifts. And if women and people in general don't get the chance to figure out how they can contribute to society in the way that is the most useful to society, it's just, I think that's just very hard. I think there's so many people just stuck in situations that they, whether it is homelessness or jobs that they feel like they're not really doing what they should be doing or contributing the way they want to be contributing. But like you said, you're stuck,
Yeah. Like if you're an artist and you have to be in that corporate job to keep paying the bills, and then are we missing out on your art?
Yeah, well, hopefully, I would hope that the artists in question would continue to make their art alongside, but that's not something that we can truly require of them as a society, because they're allowed to be tired at the end of the day, And that's another thing that I've been I think is so interesting is that, sort of going back to what I was saying about my parents earlier, it's like, how does art come to be? In the Netherlands, there's been a shift sort of from like a lot of government funding to, you know, saying like, look at the United States. You know,
they don't fund their art.
Corporations and, you know, businesses fund art. And it's great. And that way we can use our, you know, government money to do other things. And I've been reading this and I'm just like, no. Don't do it. It just ends up not being the same. And I don't think it's something that should be aspired to. But it's really hard to explain that to someone who is in the Netherlands and has never lived here.
Yeah. Okay, what advice do you have for young women just starting out?
It's okay to try, is my advice.
Whatever it is.
You need to try stuff. And I think it took me a long time. It took me this long to write like my pilot and start writing my series because I was so scared that it was going to be bad. And what if it's bad? Then what does that mean about me as a person, as a creator, as a storyteller, as someone who's trying to tell a story about a female couple? Like all the pressures that you put on yourself. And this is something I was actually talking to my friend Joanne about recently before I started writing it. And I said, I don't know what's holding me back. It's living in my brain. It's been living in my brain. I've been thinking about it. But whenever I try to sit down, I think of like vacuuming or like, you know, or like doing something else or working on another project. And she said, just trust that you've been working on it all along. It's just been stewing, it's been brewing, you've been doing the work on it, and just give yourself permission. Just sit down, write really anything. So I sat down, and my pilot document is called Just Trying Some Stuff, because giving it a name would be too overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I just was like, okay, what if I just try some stuff? And you got to trick yourself almost into trying.
What if you just write a little scene that doesn't even matter?
What if you just write something and give yourself permission to delete it afterwards? So I think, and I don't know why that is, just that operating from that place of fear, it probably is tied in somehow to what you were saying earlier about all that pressure to do it right.
The thing I think you really hit was, and I think it's so typical for women, of being so afraid of not being great at it that we don't even start. Unless we know we're going to nail it, it's really hard to jump in and do it.
Yes, and I think, and this is just, I guess, like a societal pet peeve of mine in general, that we celebrate success stories like nothing else. Mm-hmm. We are not as concerned with the amounts of trying and the multiple failures, really for anything that you attempt.
Because it looks like people come out of nowhere and land on the top of the heap.
They come out of nowhere and they land a Showtime show.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can read an interview with them about, like, how they got to where they are, but they will give you, like, the Sparks notes. Like, they were like, you know, I went to college and it was a little hard for a few years, but then I landed this great internship and then, you know. And that's just really not the way that life is, which is fine and great. And that's actually where we do most of our learning. But I think once I started realizing how hard it is for everyone, I mean, for mostly everyone, and just kept going back to just try it. What is the worst thing that could happen? And of course, it gets a little harder as you get older, because it's like at some point I'm like, oh, now I'm in my 30s and trying. But
that's an artificial deadline too.
No, it's a made up thing.
I remember thinking 30 was the wall by which you had to have everything in place. And then you turn 30 and you're like, what was I thinking?
Exactly. Because it's not like something changes. You're just still going to keep being yourself.
Yeah. And you still have so much time.
And I used to do this thing that I luckily stopped doing mostly, but reading interviews with anyone that was doing anything that I wanted to do and seeing their age.
Oh, yeah.
And then thinking, well...
30 under 30, 40 under 40, those lists.
They got their first, whatever it is, at 29, and I'm 31 now, so...
Good for them.
Yeah, well, that's what I think now, but then it was like, well, I might as well, it was almost like throwing my hands up in the air. Well,
forget it.
As if there is like, that's the only job that exists in the world and that person already has it. But there was just this insane amount of comparison going on in my brain that like I don't think anybody else knew about, but I think most people actually have going on in their brains as well. And I think for women it's even harder because we're sort of taught from a young age to almost compete with each other physically. And
there's only room for one, and there's scarcity.
There's room for one queen bee or one, all the high school movies. There's always one popular girl, and then there's like kind of the girls that are with her, and then there's like everybody else. And
it's just not true.
It's not true, but as someone who was bullied like growing up, like I definitely, there was even like, I felt like a lower place, that I had to be like, okay, so first of all, can I be normal? Right? That was always it. Can I be normal? Like,
what does that mean?
Like, who wants to be normal? I don't know. This was just what I was thinking when I was little. It's like, okay, I want to be normal. Like, and then as soon as I became a teenager, I was like, normal? What do you mean normal? I'm going to be a goth. So I turned it all the way up on its head, and I was like, oh, you want to look at me? Am I like a weirdo? Okay, fine. I'll be a weirdo for you, right? And that was a great culture to be in, because everyone was just was a very loving, everyone looks like probably very scary from the outside with all of their black makeup and like all that stuff. But I just found these like wonderfully accepting people that were like very creative for the most part as well. And then from there, I was like, okay, now what? So we're all constantly trying to like find our way and reinvent ourselves as we grow up. So if that can be just a little bit more on the forefront of the narrative, I think it would give so many more people permission to try.
I think that bit is changing. I've just seen over my lifetime, and I don't know if it's social media, because on the one hand, social media is presenting everybody as perfect, but also the accessibility to everybody, and I credit Glee with so much in the culture, but just presenting everybody as weird and different, and having the culture kind of embrace that.
Yeah.
I've seen a huge shift, and I think it's so helpful.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. I think that's been really great, and just having mainstream TV shows also about the kids that are not, it's not all about like jocks and cheerleaders, which,
quirky people.
I recently was on a plane and I got into watching Riverdale, which is like such a strange, cool show. It's about high schoolers, but then it's kind of like about their darkness. That plane ride went by really fast. I was like, wow, I would have never like tuned into it, but I was like, wow, I feel like things have changed a lot. When I was growing up, I was watching like Dawson's Creek and The OC, and it was all about, to me at least, maybe that's also what I got from it at that age, but it was all about, who gets the boy or the girl, and mostly the boy. It was like, there was like no gay people. What straight person's gonna end up with what other straight person? And it was all about, who was pretty and popular. Handsome and popular.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing to remember, that things have shifted and are shifting, and I don't think we'll know until 10 years from now how that has affected like young people growing up now.
Yeah. We'll see. I have a bunch of incubators.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't yet have kids, but you have kids, so you're probably better at, assessing that than I am.
Let me wax on about children these days.
The stage of youngsters today.
But I do see it with them. There's a lot more, embracing of everybody's weirdness and everybody's differences.
That makes me so happy to hear that.
Oh, me too. I think it's great. And I think media is going to get us there a long way.
Let's give the media some credit too, for some stuff. They have a hard time.
Well, we can give them some blame for a lot of things.
They have a hard time right now. They've done a lot of things wrong, but they're also doing some things right.
Yes. So what did I not ask you that I should have asked you about?
I guess I will say one thing that has really helped me as a creator and an artist is doing outreach work.
Tell me more.
I started working in drug rehabilitation centers and prisons as a teaching artist, both a performer and a writer with the residents or the people that were incarcerated. About 2 years after I graduated acting school, it was an outreach division that the Stella Adler Studio of Acting has to this day. And I started out as a volunteer, and the first time I walked into one of these rooms at it was like an in-house facility in Brooklyn. And it was an all-male facility, and the men walked in, and it was just amazing to see them write and perform and get up and do something that they'd never done before. Never. Like, why don't you write something about yourself and just go up there and now it's a scene. They were like, and they just did it. And I started volunteering regularly, and then I actually ended up becoming a faculty member of the outreach division and working with at-risk youth on scholarships from New York City schools. And it just changed so much about the way that I create and approach art. Because seeing people that didn't really think they had a voice or deserved to have a voice, seeing them find that voice. I know we talk a lot about people finding their voice. It's become a little bit of a phrase that way, that it's kind of okay. But
except that it's so important.
I'm going to just keep saying it because I think it's just imperative. And it was humbling in a way because with all of my internal, like, are my headshots good enough? Like, am I like going to show up at this audition and like, is my crop top going to be okay? And, I was like doing modeling work at the time, which is like a whole other, like, can turn you into like a head case. And I think doing that work helped me to hone in on the bigger picture and to let go of some of the demands I was making of myself and to let go of some of that pushing I was doing with myself to do the auditioning that I wasn't enjoying at all and didn't really want to be doing. And it helped me to move in like a truer direction for myself.
So focus on the storytelling.
And focus on really the storytelling and see like whatever room you walk into, whether it's,
What was the biggest thing you learned doing that work?
I think the most important thing that I've learned is that it's not about me. Mm-hmm. It can turn into this thing where it's, me. How does this relate to me? What is this about me? And that's normal because like I'm the epicenter of my own universe, right? I'm me.
You're the
living
star
in
of
this
your
world.
own story.
I'm the star of my own story. Thank you very much. But I think sort of going against that completely, especially at that phase in my life when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, how I wanted to tell stories, is that it's not about me.
Talk a little bit more about, because I imagine you're watching just the storytelling of those people transform themselves or transform their lives.
Yeah.
What was that like?
To this day, it's one of the best things that I've ever been able to do, that I was fortunate enough to be able to do, because people trust you with their stories.
I was just going to ask, when you walk in the room the first time, how do you gain their trust and make that a safe enough space for them to actually even do that work?
It goes over time, but it's really a matter of it's almost like making not that big of a deal of it. It's like, hey, we're from the Stella Adler studio, we're a bunch of actors, this is what we do, and we'd love for you to do it with us. What if we take the theme fathers? What comes to mind? You can write about something from your own life, you can write about something fictional, and then the stories come out. Like, whatever it is that comes up, but also, I was a drama major in high school, or I used to write stories as a kid, or like someone brought me this beautiful drawing once for my birthday, and he was like, oh yeah, like this is what I do when I'm not here, like I try to draw, and I'm like, oh, so you're a visual artist? I was like, no. It's like, I'm not a visual artist. I'm like, yeah, you just brought me this beautiful drawing, you're a visual artist. He's like, yeah, like, so instead of just being, I think it's so hard in the world to be more than one thing. People are always like, so what do you do? Who are you?
Yeah. And in that moment, they're criminals.
Yeah, they're criminals, they're drug addicts. A lot of them also in the drug rehab center were court mandated. So it was like, okay, you either go to jail or you go.
Yeah.
So there was some, brushing with the, law enforcement. And I'm not negating that in any way. I know that there are a lot of people in the world that have done many, many bad things. But I also, how do we as a society deal with those people? And knowing that there are a lot of them, and that putting them away and not looking at them, not touching them, not talking to them, not listening to them. 97% of everyone in prison will at some point get out of prison.
Yeah.
So how do we want to interact with people once they get out? Like, we can't just expect everything to be hunky-dory, Prison is a very challenging environment. So it taught me a lot about people.
Yeah,
about how important it is to listen to them.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
Like, I think Orange is the New Black changed everything, too.
Yes, Orange is the New Black is still, it's such an important show.
Such an important show.
Yeah.
Just to talk about prison and prisoners and the whole prison industrial complex, I think they address all of that stuff so beautifully. It makes you just see it so completely differently.
Yeah, and Ava DuVernay's documentary 13.
Oh my God.
There's just been a lot of great work being done. I tell everyone to read Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy. He does a lot of social justice work. He's a lawyer started out in Alabama, and he helps people on death row. And that's what he does, and the book is beautiful and heartbreaking, and we got to all step a little bit more outside of ourselves and challenge ourselves to do that constantly.
It's a big deal, and I'm glad so much of that work is being done at the same time, like prisons are being privatized and becoming so awful. Like, it's so important to have the stories and have people talking about what's really going on rather
Yes.
than just warehousing people.
Exactly, because they're still here. We put them in a sub-society. Like when I used to go to Rikers Island in New York, you take a bus all the way to the end of the line, go over a bridge, you're on Rikers Island, it's an island, and you go through the gates, and it's old and it's not that well maintained. And then you're on the other end of the intake building or whatever, and then there's more buses.
What do you mean?
There's a bus system in the actual prison
To get to the different parts of the prison?
Yeah, that's how big it is.
Oh, it's a whole city?
It's like a prison island, and I was just like, what? And I was like, but this exists like right next to. I can see from this bus like the bank towers of Manhattan, and I don't really even know how to put it into words, but to sort of like being able to enter and leave this like sub-society that we've created, and how so very few people know. They know that it's there, kind of, but if you were like, hey, can you point out like Rikers on the map for me? They'd be like, I don't know.
But it's a whole different world.
It's like, why do I need to know that? Because that's where the bad people go, right?
Right.
And it's like, yes, that is where bad quote unquote people go, but that's also where people go. Mm-hmm. So could we talk to those people maybe?
What? What?
Crazy idea. Could we talk to those people?
And ask what happened.
What happened? And tell us not just, we never, because we're not lawyers or social workers or therapists, right? We were actors and performers, writers. So it wasn't nobody was required to tell us about their crime or anything. They could talk about stuff that they did, but they didn't have to. It was about like what defines you. It's about owning what you did, obviously, but also what defines you other than the thing that you did that got you in here.
You have other stories than the story that got you here.
Everyone has other stories. I'm sitting here for an hour talking to you about a part of my story, but I like tons more stories. And so with everyone who has been on your podcast and everyone that we encounter on the street, and I think humanizing a little bit more. Truly, if you ask me like what's at the heart of like why I want to tell stories, I would say that that's probably it.
Okay, I won't ask you because you just answered. How can people find you?
They can go to my website, which is Mari Meyer, MariMeyer.com. And they can see about some of the stuff I'm working on. I love collaborating. Love to hear from people if they like the idea for my show.
If you'd like to give her a bunch of money for the show, that would be great. If
you want to fund an LGBTQ series about the beautiful and harrowing process of trying to make a baby when you have only 2 wombs to work with.
It's a process.
Give me a call. So that's, I would say that's the thing that I'm really excited about, that I hope to be talking to more people about in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can come back and tell us all about it for your premiere.
That would be so amazing. Thank you for this experience.
I was just going to say thank you.
Beat you to it.
Thank you for doing it.
More gratitude all around. No, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Mari Meyer for sharing her story. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms. And go subscribe to catchabreakpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.